Today, I'd like to continue our series on the environment. We've been taking a look at the letter of Pope Francis, Laudate Si, and taking a look at some of the different aspects of that letter and how it would apply to our world today. Looking at the effects of climate change. Well, Francis, in his letter, makes a point that we have to realize that we are in this situation of climate change. We have to confront it realistically. We can't keep our head in the sand about it. People will say that this is really just part of certain cycles, but when you look at carefully what's happening, whether it's part of certain cycles or not, the current situation it certainly causes for concern and steps that must be taken to alleviate what's happening to our climate. What are some of the negative results and effects of climate change? Well, what will happen is more people will die each year from heat waves, diseases, extreme weather, air pollution, and the resultant starvation that's caused by the changes in climate. These are some pretty serious things to look at. I mean, certainly they're happening already. But the point would be, well, what can we do to maybe alleviate some of this so that we don't suffer from these effects? What can we do to ameliorate some of the things that are happening here? What is that heat caused by primarily? The scientists analyze it. Really, there's two factors that are important. The burning of coal, the burning of oil, and then also we'll add a third, natural gas, not as harmful as the other two, but certainly harmful to the environment and can cause warming. So when we look at it, we say, well, we are doing this. We are burning coal, we're burning oil, we're burning this natural gas to provide energy, which we need, of course, to provide electricity, heat, all of those good things. But what can we do? Are there other alternatives that we can use that might not be so harmful? We have seen that these are harmful, they have negative effects. So what can we do to search for something that would be better? That would be certainly the way to look at it. The co-author of this study in terms of the negative effects of the climate change, Helen Adams of King's College in London. Helen has in her summary of some of these effects, there's a really good way of putting it. She says, the future depends on us, not the climate. A lot of times we take the opposite effect. Well, we'll have to see what the climate does and then we'll react. Well, Helen says, no, it's really up to us, isn't it? In terms of the actions that we can take to improve the climate so it doesn't get as warm, doesn't have all these negative effects, doesn't harm people as much. So that would be our question. What can we do to help in this situation? It's like anything. When we see a problem, when we see an issue, we want to reach out and help. When we see somebody who is hurting, walking on the street, we see somebody who has an accident, our first reaction is, well, what can I do to help that person? If I don't have the expertise myself, who can I call? How can I ameliorate what that person is going through? I think the same analogy would apply with regard to climate. We see certainly certain negative effects that are caused by the burning of the oil and the coal and the natural gas. Well, can we do something that will help that situation? And certainly that's what we're striving to do today. It's interesting, they say in this report from the United Nations, with every tenth of warming, many more people die from heat stress, heat and lung problems from the heat and the air pollution, infectious diseases, which you don't often think about, but it's certainly related to this situation, illnesses from mosquitoes, and then starvation. So it's just a little increase in that temperature that can have amazing effects. You think of only 1/10 of a degree. What's that? That's no big whoop, right? I mean, 1/10 of a degree. But even that 1/10 is going to really affect us in a radical way. Uh, so this can create dangers to people, to plants, to animals, to ecosystems, and also to economies. So this is obviously a complex problem. One thing affects another thing, which affects another thing. So you think, well, the climate, a few degrees, it gets a little hotter, no big deal. But then you think of, well, it's going to affect our food supply. We're not going to be able to grow as much food because of the increased heat. It's going to lead to drought, which is going to lead to, people really, dying from lack of that great resource of water because of the drought, right? So you think of the effect that has on an economy. Well, we're not going to have as many workers. There's more people dying. There's medical costs, air pollution, the medical costs associated with air pollution. We don't often think of. We just think, well, we're polluting, but we need to pollute somewhat to kind of keep things going. But then you think of, well, okay, we're polluting, but then think of the effects on people's health and the cost in terms of hospitalization, the cost in terms of medicine, the cost in terms of doctors, nurses. It just, all of these things, of course, are interrelated. And so we try to study them and address them in whatever way certainly we can. Uh, People have estimated, well, let's put a dollar amount on the potential damages that could come from climate change and increased heat in our society. And the estimates are in the trillions of dollars. So you can imagine the effect that this is going to have. This is not a small little amount. This is a huge amount of money that's going to be as a result of repairing, all of these harms that we are doing to our environment. So it becomes certainly much of a economic problem. How are we going to sustain the cost of the repair that is needed? Plus, of course, the damage to people's lives, the damage to families, people having to relocate to different parts of the world. All of this, of course, becomes an issue for us. And we think of, again, another effect of this is people displaced from homes. Some places will become uninhabitable because of the increased warming, leading to more flooding, ice melting. Well, I can't live here because of the flooding. We see it in several parts of the world. Bangladesh, we've seen it. We've seen it in parts of Alaska. We see this increased flooding that's going to happen. And of course, the more warming, the more melting, the more flooding, all of this interrelated, obviously. Uh, the number then of species dwindling. So all of the different animals, how it's going to affect them. Coral disappearing, and the effect that that has on the sea. Ice shrinking, oceans rising, and then also another effect, the oceans becoming oxygen depleted and acidic. Co-author of this study was Adele Thomas of the University of the Bahamas and Climate Analytics. So we see this is an issue that people are studying seriously, trying to deal with, and trying to come up with some reasonable solutions so that people's health will be preserved and that our economies can thrive and people can do better. People can really begin this in terms of a cooperative effort among many peoples.